Hello and welcome to another MyTunes podcast here at manxradio.com.
Marc, Tyley, the nation's station, Manx Radio.
A brand new week of MyTunes on Marc, Tyley in the morning. And my guest this week is the Reverend Gordon Barker. And Gordon, you very kindly reminded me that even though you're not a full-time Rev anymore, you never lose it.
No, you can't fully retire. Well, you can, but you could try.
And you have not retired. You're still busy, not just around the Isle of Man, but overseas.
Indeed, yeah. Spain as well, yeah.
And we'll talk about that a little later. Well, it's lovely to have you with us. Your transition to becoming a vicar, a reverend, how did that happen?
People started telling me, other priests started telling me that I was being called to the ministry, and I said, no, I'm not. And that went on for quite a long time. And I still didn't know when I went for a 3-day selection, which it would go across for. So they said, you're not selected. But then I had an experience in those 3 days, and I went back to the bishop and said, I am called. Anyway, I went back 2 years later, and they told me, there'd been a mistake. I should have been called. Oh, it should have been accepted before.
Wow. So what was the light bulb moment, if we can talk about that?
Not until I was on that first selection at the end of it, and I had, shall we call it a vision?
Yes.
I was meditating, and I had a vision. The words spoken of the vision were feed my sheep, which is one of those things from the Bible. So, and other things around it suggested, and the way I felt, But it's not always like that. You might not have anything at all, but in this case I did.
You certainly did. And how old were you at that time?
50.
You weren't 18 and ready to rock and roll.
No, but I have a feeling I was being called when I was 25, but I rejected it. Well, when I was about 30 perhaps, but I rejected it, yeah.
But before that happened, what were you doing?
I was design manager at Strix on the island, and then several other engineering companies before that.
And you moved to the Isle of Man when, Gordon?
1987, yeah. So, answered the advert for a job in the northwest. It was a mate of mine, and he was lying.
Well, it sort of is the north. So you came here with Strix rather than with the ministry?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. And good times?
It was very tough company. I'd been with some terribly tough companies, and Strix was probably the toughest in many ways.
Yeah, and that involved quite a lot of travel, didn't it?
It did, yeah. Later on, especially, yeah.
We're going to go back for your first piece of music. And it's a piece of music that's been chosen before on MyTunes. There's no problem with that. Some people say this goes back over 500 years as an ancient folk song. What has drawn you to the House of the Rising Sun?
The background to drinking with my mates in various holiday destinations.
Can't say fairer than that. Shall we play it now?
Yeah.
Here it is, The Animals, House of the Rising Sun.
In New Orleans, they call the rising sun, and it's been the ruin of many a poor boy. tell your children not to do what I have done. Spend your lives in sin and misery in the house of the rising sun.
My guest this week became a vicar at the age of 50, although there had been somebody knocking at your door a bit earlier, Gordon Barker, Reverend Gordon Barker, but he didn't open the door at that occasion.
I didn't. Too busy.
Too busy getting on with life.
Yes.
Yeah. So take us through Stricts. You came over here to the Isle of Man and we established not to do your ministry work, but to work with Stricts, a big company on the Isle of Man.
Big company on the Isle of Man. At the time, it wasn't that big a company on the Isle of Man. It went up to 1,000 people, but we had not a very big turnover of things that were manufacturing these parts from kettles, technical. But in fact, we went from low level of a few thousand a year to 150,000 by the time I left. And it was that growth and the pressure on everybody because of that growth.
So engineering background. So
Yeah.
before you came here, how did you get to this? What were you doing in engineering?
Well, I left school at 16. My parents were very poor. We couldn't really do anything else. I became a student apprentice at an M&E engineering place in Loughborough. And then from there I went to a very high-tech company in aircraft equipment in Bradford. And then I went to Scotland, where just a few months later, Helen and I lived because we just got married in that year. And then I went to run a research group, R&D group in Essex, but it was really all over the world, all over America and Europe for that research group for a while. All in linear motors, things like that, for Lathwaite, if anybody's heard of him, and cryogenic motors, which are super cold, and all sorts of things.
Now, this time, this era that you were working in, everything was happening. Things were moving. The computers were coming online. This was change.
Yeah.
It was a tremendous era of change.
Yeah, I started working on computers when I was 19,
Yeah.
and that was in 1962, yeah. In fact, I was working on them before that, but using them, yeah.
When you got to the Isle of Man, what were your first impressions?
Well, when we came to look at it, we thought, is it like the Shetlands with no trees? We didn't have the faintest idea. We loved it straight away. We stayed at the Castletown Golf Links, beautiful view, and it was fantastic. We really loved the island when we first saw it. And and I remember it was bonfire day, and as the plane took off, there was all these bonfires across the island.
You said that you applied for a job in the Northwest. Well, it just happens to be an island in the Northwest. Had you been over here as a kid on holiday or anything?
Oh, no.
So it was the first time?
No, but my father used to come in 1935 on a motorbike with my uncle on back to watch the TT.
Ah, so there was a distant connection.
Oh, yeah. And I find an old map of his with on the back in pencil, bacon, trousers. In other words, their list.
Beautiful. Their packing list.
Their packing list. And we've got it on the wall in the house now.
That's brilliant. Next choice of music. Where are we going to go for this one?
Well, it's two parts of my life. One is drinking with my mates.
Which pretty well covered yesterday in the rising sun.
Yeah. But also, it's the background we use for a outside play. I'm evangelist. I used to go all over the country, and there's a play that is, and it talks about how people not having any satisfaction with their lives. And this is a brilliant background to that. I ain't got no satisfaction, with a brilliant tune as well.
Rolling Stones, here it is. The Reverend Gordon Barker is my MyTunes guest this week. He was 50 when he became the Reverend Gordon Barker. Gordon, I want you to, if you can, sum up the differences, if indeed there are any, between being a vicar when you started and being one now.
Well, I would say it's so much more freedom now because I'm retired and nobody can really pull me up. They can, but and I'm free to preach in all sorts of denominations. And luckily for me, I get invited to preach in a lot of the denominations on the island, and that's great. And in churches all over the island, and that's freedom. But when I started, I was at Ballasalla, and it was. It was an interesting time. I was the assistant priest there, so learning, obviously. Then for a time I was in Kent. Just for a time we went to Kent, and I was part of a mission, a national mission thing in the UK. That's leading groups out into to meet people in various places. Very big missions, sometimes 1,000 people part of the missions, and could be 600 churches. But we had one on the island in 2000, Walk of 1,000 Men, if anyone remembers it. Walk Isle of Man it was called. It wasn't just men, in red shirts. So that's what I was doing there, and it was also a difficult village I was the vicar of as well.
When you say difficult, hard to get people in, or were you not received very well?
It was a village which was a dumping ground, I'll say the name, Isle of Grain, and the Daily Mail a few years before that had called it the Village of the Damned.
Oh. Fair enough. In more general terms, the work of a vicar some years ago compared to the work of a vicar now has changed. And I'm thinking particularly on the Isle of Man, where so many of the parishes have merged, and rather than have one church and do your job there, you may have a lot more churches and indeed communities to deal with. Is that true across as well?
Oh, yes, very much true, yeah. That's all right. The system was great in a way that you had a responsibility for everybody in the parish as the vicar, no matter what their faith or non-faith was. And so I used to say, if I turned up to any house here, I had many parishes in the north of the island. If I turned up here in this place, maybe somewhere remote, they might not expect to see me, but they'd understand that I was on the door with my collar on, and that's a wonderful privilege.
And they'd probably know who you were.
They might.
Hopefully.
And they might spit on the ground.
Hopefully not. We'll talk a lot more along this road tomorrow, but let's have another piece of music. And where are we going today?
That great film, The Graduate, and Mrs. Robinson. During our fairly early married life, this was one of those key moments when we saw that film. It's a great film.
Jesus loves you more than you will know. Whoa, whoa, whoa. God bless you, please, Mrs. Robinson. Heaven holds a place for those who pray. Hey, hey, hey. Hey, hey, hey. Hiding in a hiding place where no one ever goes. With your cupcakes, it's a little secret, just the Robinson. the sun's a bear. Most of all, you got to hide it from the kids. Cuckoo-cuckoo, this is Robinson. Jesus loves you more than you will know. Whoa, whoa, whoa. God bless you, please, Mrs. Robinson. Heaven holds a place for those who pray. Hey, hey, hey. Hey, hey, hey. Sitting on a sofa on a Sunday afternoon, going to the candidates' debate. Laugh about it, shout about it when you've got to choose. Every way you look at it, you lose. Where have you gone, Joe DiMaggio? A nation turns its lonely eyes to you. Ooh, what's that you say, Mrs. Robinson? Joe has left and gone away. Hey, hey, hey. Hey, hey, hey.
The Reverend Gordon Barker is my Tunes guest all this week. We've had some wonderful music. We've been in the House of the Rising Sun, had a couple of pints, and we couldn't get much satisfaction with the Rolling Stones, and then we talked about Anne Bancroft, but skated over the storyline of The Graduate, because we thought it best we did. Gordon, thank you for coming on My Tunes this week.
It's great to be here.
Good to have you with us. The whole business of now being, if you like, a freelance vicar, you touched on it yesterday. You're still a reverend. You're not tied to a parish. You can go anywhere, and indeed you do. Liberating?
Very liberating, yes. Can be quite hard work. You don't quite know, because you haven't been there for a year sometimes, quite where the chapel or the church is. But it's great. And I go in, wreck the church and leave. It's just a wonderful experience.
Now, when you're a supply vicar, do you get told what to do? I mean, obviously the texts are people who are familiar with the churches that know that there are set texts, and as you go through the year, there are certain things that happen across the year in a church. But in terms of sermons, etc., are you free?
I am totally free. In fact, we don't even need to use the lectionary. We can choose anything we like, but it is so much easier for me if I can focus straight away on a particular part of the Bible, because immediately things start to fall into place. Maybe a struggle after that, but they start to fall into place.
Now, I know you very well, and I know that you love travelling, and I know you, for many years, have been a motorhome enthusiast and have travelled a lot to Spain, in particular, for the warmth and all that goes with it. But you've also, if I use the term, got a gig in Spain as a vicar. How did this come about? And tell us all about it.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's an expat community, an English-speaking community within the place in Nerja, which is on the south coast at the bottom of the Sierra Nevada in the sunshine, and very nice area, not too developed tourist-wise. Well, it's developed, but it's still a very pleasant area. And so we went there about 10 years ago, started going. Brother had been there for many years, on and off. And we started with the church, and they use a Roman Catholic church. Anyway, nice community. And so I started preaching there on occasions. Now the guy who's there last, lovely guy, he's a Welshman, but he's married to a Spanish lady. Anyway, he's retiring after about 10 years. And he's 70, so they're putting in me, and I'm 80. So it's a good swap, I think, for them. Now, I'm only there for 3 months, and I'm only doing, I'm trying only to do services and a little bit of pastoral work, going out to see people, but I won't do too much of that because I'm getting old. In fact, I am old.
But you said the guy retiring is 70 and you're back in the chair at 80. It's fantastic. When you go down to somewhere like Spain, which we all think of as primarily a Roman Catholic country, Are there pockets of Anglican communities all over the place?
Yeah, there are. There are about 3 different ones in the area where I am, mainly in cities or in conurbations, or where lots of Brits or other English-speaking people go. We have a lot of Canadians, for instance, who come, and they're fairly well scattered across Spain. And in fact, they're putting one in Morocco at the moment. It's mainly in on the coasts. I presume there's one in Barcelona and places like that, but I don't know those places. We have been to 1 or 2.
And when will you be there?
Middle of January.
Oh, perfect. Ties in rather well with the Manx winter. Final track for this bit we'll come to now, but just to let everyone know, there's an extended version of this in the podcast that'll be released to you and the rest of the waiting world at 12:05, precisely, because that's what we'll do. But for now, let's have this gorgeous piece of music and tell us a bit about why you've chosen it.
Well, this is Summertime, and it's a brilliant song, if you like that sort of thing, but it is. It's with Ella Fitzgerald singing it, and it has such beauty to it and such emotion to it as well. And it comes from the Deep South. That's its background, and we've even got Louis Armstrong on this version of it. It's just there, and throughout my life, it's been a background to my life since the 1950s, I suppose, since I was just a teenager. So, yeah.
Fantastic final choice, but as I said, there'll be more on the podcast. But for now, Reverend Gordon Barker, thank you.
Thank you.
the cotton is high. Oh, your daddy's rich and your ma is good looking. So hush, little baby, don't you cry.
One of these mornings, you gonna rise up singing. Yes, you spread your wings and you take to the sky. But till that morning, there's nothing can harm you. Yes, with daddy in my standing by.
And the living is easy. Fish are jumping, and the cotton is high. Oh, your daddy's rich, and your ma is good looking.
Why don't you say, oh,
So hush, little baby,
oh yeah.
baby, don't you cry.
Oh, don't you cry.
Don't
Oh, don't you cry. Oh, don't you cry. Oh, that as I said.
Welcome to the podcast edition of My Tunes with the Reverend Gordon Barker. Lovely to have Ella Fitzgerald, Summertime, Porgy and Bess, a classic, as you say, Gordon. For this extra bit, can we talk a little bit about China? Because I know you're going off to Spain as a freelance vicar, but when you had your ministry here, you were a regular visitor to China.
I was. That's because I was a non-stipendary. That means I was still working in Strix, although I'd cut my hours to 45 hours, which was a big cut from what we were doing. And then I was also, nothing to do with the fact I was ordained, but I was going to China a lot and other countries. We'd set up a factory in China, but that's not why I was there. I was there because they were copying some of our product and making things unsafe, and an unsafe kettle is very dangerous. So I was in Beijing a lot, in Guangzhou, but in other parts of China. And to an extent, I was representing the Brussels, committees in Brussels with the EU, to do with suppressing those sorts of products where the Chinese were copying and making dangerous versions of it. Although the company wanted me to stay longer, I would go on a Sunday night and I'd come back on the following Saturday morning, and then often I'd be preaching on the Sunday, which was great. So I remember preaching once with stickers from the thing which you get on a plane where it says "Do not disturb" and wake me up for breakfast and all sorts of things. And I used that, sticking them on my forehead, I remember, while I was preaching, making the point about being awake.
Though that's a long way to go for a very short time. It's a quick turnaround. Talk about Christianity. We mentioned some of the Anglican communities in Spain. What's it like trying to be Christian in China?
Yeah. Well, I was while I was doing this in that period with Strix, I was also doing a master's degree in theology. Well, sort of in theology. So I was carrying around with me lots of study articles while I was in China, and we were on an internal plane once, and they gave us this thing printed in large letters in English saying contraband, and it said about drugs and other things, and it said Christian literature. This is what you must not carry. And of course I had a suitcase absolutely crammed full with Christian literature. I thought it was interesting. I didn't stop doing that. I had a friend who used to smuggle Bibles into China, so he was a far more dangerous affair. But so as you used to go into China, if you drove in from Hong Kong to Guangzhou, about a 3-hour journey in a car. As you went across the border, there was a church there, Church of Living Water, and it was Chinese and English. So right on the border, one church, a free church, had made their place there, and certainly they were very visible. So yeah, I don't know what it's like now, but there was a lot of persecution of the church. I mean, persecution of all the churches. I know Roman Catholics were really persecuted. And so there's a lot of house churches in China. I think there's probably 10% of the Chinese people maybe are Christians, but you wouldn't know it because they're all underground. Maybe it's less than that now.
And there are many other countries where it's very, very hard. It's a hard graft being a Christian.
It is. It
Yeah,
is.
right around
But
the
they
world.
make a significant difference.
Yeah.
And it's not the sort of Bible punching, but it's the fact that they serve others in those communities in love and not trying to get anything out of it. And that's respected for that.
Which is what you do, sir.
To an extent, but not
Certainly.
like they do.
Well,
Yeah.
you do. Let's have our bonus piece of music, and I adore this. Talk us through it.
This is Peter Lezu, and it means pious Jesus, but that's not a particularly word I would use, pious, but there it is. But it's a beautiful piece of music. The soprano singing, I think it's soprano, I'm not very good on these things, but gets up to very high notes anyway during this, huge range. But it's only a symptom of the fact really I like classic music, and this is just one of those things. They're a bit more modern, so I chose that, and I hope you like it. You probably must have heard it because it was very famous 20 years ago, and it does reach parts that other songs can't reach.
Perfect, Gordon. Thank you. Andrew Lloyd Webber's Requiem, P.A. Jesu. Thanks for being on my tunes.
Thanks.
Jesu,
a wonderful piece of bonus music for the podcast of My Tunes with the Reverend Gordon Barker. Thank you again, Gordon. I'm Marc Tyley, and join me whenever you can for the morning show on Manx Radio, 9:30 to 12, including such ludicrous things as horse racing over Formica. I know it has to be seen and heard to be believed. Podcasts coming up here every single day, by the way, so keep coming back to manxradio.com.